Sofia, also at the Food Cafe. She is taking care of tech because it's too much for me. No, just. And tonight is the first event we're doing this fall, and due to the pandemic, we have been limited to do events. But hopefully we will open up now. And thanks to Sal, came to me and I would like to do an event. Crypto rules. Yeah. So my job here is just to check out how many of you would like to have pizza in the break. No, I will take it the other way. So how many do not want pizza? No pizza for me, thank you. 2. All right. Do we have any vegetarians here? Vegans?
That is a first.
Lactose intolerant?
Wow, that is impressive. Give yourselves a
Yeah, this is our 9th year we are running. Actually, on Friday we are celebrating our 9th year. So you're welcome back on Friday to have some party from 4 p.m. So everybody's welcome at Food Cafe. We are really happy to have you here, all of you. And my next step here is to introduce Sal. And we should also say hello to everybody on YouTube. So, hey everybody.
We are live on YouTube.
Yeah, Sophia will check your comments there. So there will be a Q&A in the end of this talk. And in that case, you have to ask your questions in the Q&A. But please note that through YouTube, you will be a delay of like something between 30 and 60 seconds. So yeah.
Without any further ados.
A big hand to Sal.
Alrighty, and just want to reiterate what Michael said. It's awesome to see so many people down here. Like when I was badgering him to do this talk, he was like, no one's interested in crypto. Who cares about this? I know, I'm just making it up. Come on, I have to embellish the story. But no, it's really cool to see so many people. And we're super surprised because, yeah, I mean, I was expecting maybe 10, 12 people to turn up. And it happened really quickly. So awesome. That's fantastic. Now let's see if I can learn how this technology works. So this is me. My name is Salim Badakhchani. You can call me Sal. You can call me Sal. Okay, and I've been working in IT for 25 years, very boring in that respect, typically in telecommunications and more recently in fintech. And currently, I'm the director of Xenith Consulting Limited, which is a company that I set up back in 2005. So showing my age there, but that's me. You can, at the end of this presentation, there'll be ways that you can get in touch with me, follow me on Twitter, like, share, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so now what I'm interested in is who are you guys? Because this event was kind of propositioned for entrepreneurs, engineers, and enthusiasts. So what I'd like to do first is find out how you found out about us. So just a quick raise of hands. Was it social media? Facebook? No? Okay, that's interesting. Was it the Food Cafe newsletter? Okay, awesome. And was there any other ways that you found out about us? Word of mouth or?
Yeah, from you directly.
Oh, from me, yeah, cool. My sphere of influence is growing. But from GoTo as well. Yes. Awesome, cool. Now, I just want to establish the level of, I was going to say competence, but that's the right word. The level of experience that you have with crypto tech. That's not just cryptocurrency, but like with blockchain and distributed ledgers. So how many of you guys are what you would say a beginner to it? Show hands. Okay, cool. How many of you would say you're intermediate? And cool. That's good. I mean, intermediate is like you probably own some crypto or something like this. Oh, okay, cool. And how many of you expert? Like, how many of you created your own cryptocurrency? Oh my God, right. You should be doing the talk. No, that's cool. So we focused this on a beginner level. That's where we wanted to start with. But as with all of these things, don't be worried about asking questions. If I don't know how to answer them, maybe someone else in the audience does. And the idea is that really predominantly is trying to get everyone who's interested in cryptocurrency together, and specifically after the whole COVID nonsense, is to try and get everyone to basically have a face-to-face and an in real life kind of experience. So what's next? The subject of the talk was barriers to adoption to cryptocurrency. Now we can go technical barriers, because Food Cafe is a technical forum. So one of the things that Michael was very stressed to me was it's very important that we keep this on a technical level. As with all good conversations, it will veer off. And I actually want it to, because the forms, what I'll be talking about with the technical barriers typically fall into two categories. Commercial barriers to commercial adoption and barriers to retail adoption. And the way that I will define commercial is institutions to institutions, and retail is to individuals. So products and services aimed at retail, and products and services that are aimed at institutions. The reason that we wanted to go with adoption was specifically last year was a milestone for cryptocurrency and distributed ledger technology, because we had, for the first time, institutional buy-in. And by that I mean the big banks started to get involved, the investment banks, and we had some hedge funds. And what we're hoping to see in 2021 is the realization of the propositions that they had made with respect to getting into cryptocurrency. And that's already starting to happen. So why we wanted to focus on adoption is we feel 2021 is going to be a really big year for adoption. So that's the big thing, and we wanted to try and figure out what the barriers are. Okie doke. So with respect to those two aspects, commercial and retail, for commercial barriers, typically, in my experience, has been with respect to infrastructure and software. So what does that mean? A lot of the infrastructure that deals with the creation of cryptocurrency, the exchange of cryptocurrency, and ultimately the, if you like, transactioning of cryptocurrency tends to be at an in an infrastructure level. The barrier tends to be you need a lot of infrastructure. And mining, for example, is quite an involved engineering prospect. But also out of that, the software protocols that are required. Because one of the things that I was involved with back in the UK was a e-money organization called Ziglu. And one of the things that we tried to do at Ziglu was to try and make it accessible. Even though it's a commercial operation, we're trying to bring it to a retail market. And one of the biggest problems we had was interfacing with the protocols that are being currently used in the banking and financial services. They're quite antiquated. Without going into too much detail, we're using protocols like SOAP and XML, which have been around for years, and they don't lend themselves that well to some of the things that we were trying to accomplish. So that's on a commercial level. On a retail level, which was also what we had problems with, essentially usability. I don't know, so some of you already own crypto. I'm not sure which platforms or applications that you've used, but typically they're not very user friendly, right? So that also is a huge barrier to entry. Hello, come in. So yeah, that's typically one of the biggest problems that we've had is how do we make this stuff easy on a retail level? So that's how I've tried to categorize them. By no means the only barriers to entry, but to get the conversation started, we'll run with these options. So let's have a look. Where are we on? Okay. Outside of the technical challenges that we faced are, as I said before, legacy infrastructure and hardware, antiquated software protocols and APIs. Most of the technical problems are being solved, actually. So that's not necessarily a huge thing. And actually in the last 10 years, what we've seen is that every potential problem that's been thrown at cryptocurrency has had a solution, typically technical. So that's always been a good thing. And but we still have a problem with the antiquated protocols, because these institutions don't necessarily change their protocols overnight. The stability that they have is something that you don't change something that in their eyes is not broke. But what we're hoping to do is to see more more protocols coming in, more engineering work, and essentially more research and development to be able to further the cause of crypto adoption on a commercial level, right? Right, and as I mentioned, technical challenges for retail, usability and access, applications and platforms. Usability is a big deal because if you have a barrier to entry to be able to use an application, even to purchase cryptocurrency, that's going to put a lot of people off. So what I'm hoping to do is, again, in the Q&A, is try and find out your own experiences with the applications that you're using, what platforms you're using, and what are trials and tribulations you're having in using them. Because I've had plenty, and there are some nightmare stories with people losing their wallets or forgetting their passwords, and we've all heard some of the stories that are out there. So that's something that I'll be really interested in trying to find out from you guys, if you've been in that situation, and potentially what ways we can come to think about how to remedy them. Outside of that, I want to just skip quickly ahead. This is the kind of really the crux of it, because even though we're talking about technical barriers, what ends up happening is that the technical side is actually the easiest part to solve. What we really have issues with are, I've put these and plenty more, but we begin with political barriers to entry. There are interests that don't necessarily like the idea of cryptocurrency. We have regulatory problems, and actually the regulation is really interesting. Some of it is in favor of crypto and some of it is not. The institutions that I've worked for actually have really tried hard to get regulatory compliance in there because it's in our favor, it's in our interest to try and get that regulatory buy-in. Geographical, so this is another interesting aspect. Using the word third world, I don't know if that's a politically correct term anymore, but there are certainly some areas of the world which are not as technically advanced as others. And so this is also potentially a problem that we need to get over. And of course, the last one is our friend FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And there's a lot of security issues concerning cryptocurrency. There's also a lot of, again, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You see the horror stories. There's an element of criminality that's also involved. Custody is a problem. So without going into too much more and trying to keep the focus on the technical, what I'd like to do, and this was lightning fast, is to try and open it up and see if we can have a conversation with respect to some of the issues that we've just talked about here. So Q&A, jump in there. That was as fast as I can go, by the way. So what I would say is, first of all, just to get the conversation started, some of you guys are already using crypto. Let's begin with, what are the pains that you've had using crypto, or in terms of purchasing it, in terms of a medium of exchange, or in terms of a store of value? Do I get any takers? Regulatory.
My bank didn't like me buying crypto.
Nailed it. So right now in the UK, what's happened with, I typically use Binance, for example. UK has, or rather Binance, they basically stopped sterling transactions. And that regulatory barrier is a huge one. Again, not a technical problem potentially, but can it be solved technically? Probably not. This is something that requires buy-in. I think the response to when, in the UK, when Barclays, for example, decided to stop UK GBP transactions, the technical workaround was you use another exchange other than Binance, and you move your money into that exchange. And so you're basically doing this whack-a-mole experience, which is again, it's in my opinion, it's a workaround that's unnecessary, and that's come about because the email that I got was they were protecting me as a which is quite condescending. I mean, like, let me, I may not be an expert, but let me lose my money. It is my money. So that's the technical, as I said, technical solution to that is that you're forced to try and find an alternative way, which you always will find. The only problem with that is you have to then go back and do your own research. You have to start talking with other people who've also had the same experience. So yeah, that's a huge one. Any other problems you guys have?
I was just going to say, I'm from the U.S. I have a PayPal account. I was just thinking, I don't know if Swedes can do it actually, but on PayPal, if you have an account, you can buy Cryptonite, you can buy Bitcoin.
Right.
I don't know if anyone else is.
This was a huge one actually, because as we were saying before, 2020 was the announcement of the institutional investment coming in.
Yeah, it was last year.
PayPal was one of them. And so we've got this disconnect between what's happening with state and what's happening with business, as it were, commerce. And to me, it seems as though there has to be a solution in there, halfway house, somewhere. I mean, when someone like PayPal will say Bitcoin is the go, it's going to be incredibly difficult for individual state actors to try and prevent those transactions from happening. So in a way, that kind of adoption is great. Another good example was with Tesla and Elon, and initially accepted Bitcoin for the purchase of Tesla. Then suddenly this environmental issue, which actually I should have put in there, an environmental issue was brought up, and which in my mind is dubious, but because there are other cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin, and mining is only one aspect of being able to get cryptocurrency. But there seems to be a small turnaround now. It's a bit more acceptance, and I think Elon, he's had a few more puffs on that joint, and he's probably more invested in Dogecoin more than anything else now. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, good example.
So besides the currency, has there been any kind of adoption of crypto in other formats like time and attendance processes?
Right. So in terms of distributed ledger and blockchain technology having applications outside of cryptocurrency, 100%. I mean, like the supply chain is one of the aspects where distributed ledger has been really, really useful. So outside of cryptocurrency altogether, this is just a way of being able to tell who, where, why, what, when, essentially, which is really useful if you have a number of suppliers and partners who are giving you goods and products and services, and you want to know exactly where they came from. So that's that aspect of distributed ledger technology having applications outside of cryptocurrency, I think, is a big driver for adoption. But go anywhere towards?
Yeah, I'm trying to find out, is there any success stories around it? You talk about third world countries.
Okay.
And I come from one of those, and I can see a lot of solutions that can be solved by
small
communities, because everyone in Africa's got a phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? So you say, yeah, there's no tech.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised.
No, I stand corrected.
Okay.
I should have. Yeah.
Every single shack has one.
Yeah, and
all right. So there's a lot of solutions that can be built around it that can have a currency aspect to it, a supply chain, whatever you want.
Yes.
But I'm looking at any success stories around it.
Right. So one of the biggest problems I think you can bring with third world countries, they have a different driver, and that driver is the politically unstable environment and a currency which can be potentially inflated away in terms of value. So actually, adoption of cryptocurrencies in those countries is rapid. I think Nigeria is one of the biggest examples where cryptocurrency adoption has just gone through the roof. That driver is probably going to be something that you cannot ignore. So what we can distill that problem into, we want frictionless payments and we want store of value. These are the two things which I think really hit those third world countries. We don't necessarily have a kind of why is it important? I mean, I've got my currency keeps its value. I can use Swish payments. I can transfer it easily. These are things that don't necessarily apply to third world countries. So I 100% agree that a success story in those regions. I think there's certain cryptocurrencies. I think that Nano is a big one. Cardano is another one where they're specifically looking at emerging markets to essentially peddle their wares. And yeah, I think that there's my brother is actually involved in a company called Noah, and what their mission statement is to bring cryptocurrency to the next billion people. And I think if you're looking at where the real investment opportunity is, it's probably in those emerging markets. And success stories, the next talk I'll do is what are the drivers for cryptocurrency, because I think that that's going to be an even more useful discussion to have with respect to barriers. It's hard for us to imagine what it's like when the currency that you're getting paid in is worth half the money or half its value within 6 months, right? So we simply don't have that problem.
Try 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, and there are, yeah, exactly.
So,
Yes.
can you go
Oh,
closer to
Bit
the
closer, is that
more?
more closer? Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that that's a huge one. I mean, in terms of your own experiences, like when you mentioned 30 days, is that something that hit you yourself, or?
Yes, I'm from South Africa. Okay, so COVID hit, our currency devalued by 50%.
Wow.
Okay, so it's a massive kind of jump.
Yeah.
So if you have cryptocurrency, hey, that was great. You know, it was something was stable.
Yep.
I know people in Zimbabwe, for example, that pay 20% fee. So they have a problem like, hey, can't get their currency out.
Yeah.
They pay 20% black market fee
Wow.
to get crypto. So that's just one aspect to it, all right? But you have large communities of mining that you can actually provide an ecosystem end to end. And you're talking about fintech, there's a lot of those kind of needs because you've got migrant workers.
Right.
And general aspect is African people like sending money home.
Yeah.
It's a big part of their social aspect,
Yeah.
all right? And now if you work in South Africa and you stay in Rwanda,
Yeah.
it's a massive cost for you to transfer that money. And your grandmother stays in a village that's 100 kilometers away from the first access to any form of ATM or anything.
bank. Yeah.
Now, if you have that, so in Kenya, they transferred airtime. Similar way as a cryptocurrency, they used airtime.
Right.
Hence my question, is there any other success stories where you kind of put that principle in place?
Yeah. I think, I mean, off the top of my head.
Sorry, that was all over the place.
No, that's cool. That's exactly what we're looking for. Off the top of my head, I'll next talk I do, we'll definitely have a look and find out if there is.
Because I come out of banking, and that's a real value for me, is something like that. We all know that within Bitcoin has an issue around transaction times. Okay, so there's no way I can process a credit card payment of that.
Yeah.
It's going to fall flat in 2 seconds
Yeah.
flat. So yeah.
So that's an interesting one. Bitcoin, and I think that's called Lightning Network, which is supposed to speed up those transactions. There's some issues with Lightning Network. I mean, the apparently, don't quote me on this, but something like 1 in 5 transactions fail, which is not good. But the fact that they're even attempting to put a layer on top of Bitcoin, I think from the perspective of cryptocurrency technology, there are plenty of alternatives to Bitcoin that will handle transactions much faster. There's like XRP, for example, that will do it. There's even the ones that were based on the original Bitcoin fork, that Litecoin, for example, that still managed to do transactions faster. So I'm optimistic that the technology, in that sense, those technical aspects will be fixed. But we still got the regulatory and cross-border payments issue. I mean, one of the other things was remittance, like how people get paid. And you're working in one country, but you're getting paid from another. And managing that when you have fiat currencies, depending on where you are, is also a huge problem. But there are people actively looking at trying to fix those. I'm going to say XRP again, just for,
They've got some real successes, and a couple of banks have adopted them.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see more, and I think we're going to see more innovation in that sector. That innovation is going to happen much more in emerging markets like South Africa and developing markets. So I'm optimistic about that. Any other horror stories or success stories? So one of the things, for example, that came up when I was researching this was being able to transact your cryptocurrency into fiat by Google Pay, right? So that's kind of an invisible transaction, right? Because there's already services in place that will look at what cryptocurrency you have and attempt to make it convertible into a fiat. And then if you have, for example, a e-money banking institution that you've then put that card into Google Pay, it's invisible. It's basically it's behind the scenes. So that is a I think it's going to be something that's going to be much more appealing to more developed countries, because we've already, for people who already have crypto, they already have fiat, but they want to just spend their crypto. So that's something that's happening. The other aspect that we're interested in is point of sale. Being able to, as I said, being able to go to a bar or a restaurant and literally just tap your card or tap your phone and get that transaction through. Again, that's going to happen invisibly. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to have a Bitcoin sign on it and then you get to just pay with Bitcoin. You'll still be paying with your fiat, but it'll be under the hood. So again, I'm thinking technically we can get past those problems, but yeah.
The problem is it's also technically, I'm not a technical guy. I'm on the other side of the equation.
Yes.
And when it becomes, technically this, technically that, it's not working anymore.
Yeah.
And that's not just for crypto, I have that problem with regular, like for instance, I put in a new pay function on the e-commerce site, and it wasn't working. Well, it was working, but I wasn't getting paid into my company account.
Right.
And by the time we solved this, I've gone through like 4 different banks because they just did the technical part, and these guys just supplied the other financial platform.
Right.
And they bought this part of the service from Saxo when it's European, but from Citigroup when it's American.
Yeah.
And Citigroup refers me to Citigroup.
Yeah.
At some point, it's not usable.
Yeah. And
which brings, when you say people want to spend their crypto, what do people spend their crypto on?
So it's basically, when we start thinking about crypto as just on anything that you want, right? Imagine if so for example, I don't want to hold fiat because where I am, fiat currency is inflated away, but I do hold crypto and I want to be able to spend that and basically still you want to have a store of value and a medium of exchange. So, but you're absolutely correct. How do you manage that invisibly? And I'm thinking, and I'm pretty optimistic that will happen, but there are challenges outside of the technical.
I'm thinking, it's like, because crypto is very volatile. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. It's not suitable for consumerism, in the traditional sense. You don't want to buy something paid with crypto now, and then like 6 months later, you're like, oh my God, if I just paid with regular Swedish krona.
Yeah, so it depends on the currency that you're comparing it to, right? So volatility against the US dollar, yeah, your volatility against the South African rand.
Against what people are using now.
Okay, but that's geographically relative, right? So for example, if you're in Sweden, that's not necessarily a big deal, right? We don't, the fluctuation or of the currency is just not a big deal for us. But in South Africa, it is.
So to give you an idea, South Africa, there's a 5% charge for every form of transaction. Okay, so you get 95 cents to the rand or dollar from your bank before you transact. So crypto kind of takes that piece away, all right? And this is some of the attraction to it, and it keeps a value, all right? And we've mentioned some of the other pieces to it.
I think we were saying sorry.
Yeah, I was also thinking about all these essentially middlemen, right? In between these with technology. I'm thinking the way I view crypto and the blockchain is I think everything that problem is actually going to be solved by crypto, getting rid of all these middlemen, making things much more streamlined.
Yeah, no,
that's kind of what that's why I believe in crypto. I think the problem you're having there, those things, like right now,
they're like legacy financial systems that are slow to change, right? So crypto has a window of opportunity to get in there and either accelerate that change or make them redundant. And I think that that's the key thing, because if you, this is why I think in 2020 we did see this institutional investment going in, because the kind of writing was on the wall. It was like, if we don't make these systems, and they've enjoyed monopolies on these things, right? I mean, like for a long time, financial services have enjoyed the monopoly creation of fiat currency, for example. And I think what we're doing now, at least what we hope to achieve, is to try and, if not pressure them to change, because I mean that would be the best thing, right? If we pressure them to change, but if they don't change, then you have to provide a viable alternative. That's more sorry, yes.
Yes, and that's why the Swedish state is investigating the possibility to
Yeah.
go to e-crown, actually, because they're seeing
Yeah, there's value.
the value in it.
But what I'm trying to say is, the context is really what matters, because just as you said, in South Africa, when the context, the government-supplied economy is more volatile than the crypto economy, it makes sense people move over. Over time, you develop a culture, a trust in the crypto, in the tools and the institutions that run that circus. In Sweden, it's a different ballgame. So when somebody comes with a mission statement, 1 billion new crypto users, that's not a single market.
No,
It's
that.
about projecting what's the crypto culture in 3 years. In 4
So,
years.
but the idea with that mission statement is, where are those billion people? Because they're not here, right? They're in Africa, they're in India, and they are the majority. So, like, it's the mission statement itself. You're correct. It does apply to where you are geographically and the systems that are in place. Interesting point you made, where the Swedish government is investigating. It's not just the Swedish government. There's plenty of other people in Western governments who are looking at this. The area to be cynical about this is, what kind of cryptocurrency are they going to produce? There was an interesting talk that I listened to, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but they were saying that the issuance of some cryptocurrencies by the bigger institutions are more mechanisms for surveillance, because they don't have the same anonymity that might exist with certain cryptocurrencies. You're still going to the state provider, so it actually opens a even more potentially nefarious method for states to be able to carry out surveillance. It's an interesting concept. Whether or not it's actually the case, I don't know. But there are going to be technical solutions. I think the balance here is, the balance would be to be able to force the existing financial systems to provide better services and more cheaper services, and at the same time to be able to have the investment in the R&D to make sure that there is competition there that's forcing their hand to do it. So, as I said, I'm an optimist, and I guess to an extent that's why you guys are here as well, because you got some kind of investment in it. So, yeah.
I don't want to pick on you or anyone else, but my background's finance, and I don't really think you want the rules to really change. I just read yesterday, I think it was on Bloomberg, Coinbase, you're probably all familiar with that. Thousands of their customers in the past few months, they log in and the account's just gone. And this was brought out yesterday in their public filings after their IPO. These companies, they don't have any understanding of security. Banks do.
Right.
I started, in New York, and I mean the tech and the telecom guys, they basically work at the banks. Nobody spends more money on technology than banks do. That's just fact.
Yeah.
So, like, we want all the simplicity, but do you really want the rules to change? I like to go into my bank and know that my money is going to be there.
Sure.
And I think also that gets into the regulatory.
We need a regulatory
good
framework.
regulation.
Yeah, I think
Helps crypto.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is true until people don't trust those institutions, which
Yeah.
is why you need crypto.
When you log into your bank and your money's there,
Well, it
I
does-
trust them. I get annoyed when they, want to take a percent here and there,
Yeah.
and
But this example is debunked by history, and you can see it a week ago in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
We're going to the bank and it was not there anymore, right?
Mm.
Or like some years ago in Lebanon,
Yeah.
or in the past in Chipre. So, I mean,
banks, they can disappear.
for me,
Yeah.
this whole thing is about personal responsibility, right? So, yeah, you can have the money in the bank, but if I want, I just can have it myself. It's like having cash under the bed. The problem with cash is that you don't have control of the issuance, and then they debase you, which is happening all over the world.
It's happening to the majority of
It's
the
happening
world.
everywhere in the world. I mean, just right now we want to say like, yeah, the US, every currency is backed by the US dollar. And the US dollar is backed by nothing. It was backed by gold. And just like in the last 16 months, I think it's over 30, almost 40% of the dollars were created in the last 16 months.
Right.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And we don't see the inflation coming right now, right? I mean, inflation is a vector. You have like some products that go up in price a lot, some others that don't. But I mean, you see in the US, for example, BlackRock, which is like the biggest wealth management company, they got the benefit of this basically getting money at zero marginal cost, and then just bought a lot of houses. And now, I mean, we will live in this utopia in the future where you will own nothing and be happy according to the World Economic Forum, right? So for me, I mean, this is kind of an escape.
So is that one of the reasons that you're involved with crypto, because you see it as a store of value? Is that
exactly
right? Okay.
Yeah.
And this is well, yeah. Sorry, do you want to go?
Yeah, I just want to. I didn't want to pick on you either, but
No,
you
please,
said that
please,
the
go
bank-
Get in there.
the bank is society, but then you named Coinbase, and that is, you said usability at the beginning.
Yeah.
That is one of the examples when you trade your security for usability, because if you have cold storage, then your account will not be empty, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the other thing you said, that we will be trading our crypto for fiat when we are doing purchases. There are historical examples of places where you had really, really bad forex, like in satellite Soviet countries.
Mm-hmm.
And they had multiple markets. You had the market for the national currency, which was shitty, and then you had a market for black market, for dollar.
Yeah.
And then you had black market for Deutschmark.
Yeah.
And they were all in parallel, and nobody wanted to trade your dollars or Deutschmark for the national currency, right? But you were doing the small stuff you were doing with national currency, and the bigger stuff like buying a car or whatever, maybe escaping to another country in the West, you did it with the other money.
Yeah.
So I think I do not agree with the idea that we need to exchange for fiat, but I think that we can have parallel markets for different kinds of
exchanges, assets. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I use fiat again in the context of convenience in countries where that fiat currency is something that's stable. But you're absolutely right. If that fiat currency is not stable, you're not going to exchange into it. So again, what crypto brings to us, I think, is alternatives and basically choice. And that's strong. That's strong. Again, it's a real mindset change to try and think of your situation here as opposed to like someone else's situation in South Africa. Yeah, because it really is. It's hard for us to imagine that tomorrow we wake up and the Swedish crown is worth 50% less. But it does happen, and it does happen to a lot of the people, the majority of the people around the world. The thing that we experience, I think, in more westernized markets, or developed markets rather, is that inflation is happening. But a lot of it is exported abroad, and a lot of it happens at a pace where we can deal with it. You know, it's maybe 1 or 2% a year, I don't know, but it's not 50% overnight. And so, yeah, I think crypto is potential solution to that. There's also other solutions, but that's probably one for the after we have a beer, because there's a whole thing about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and there's a lot of innovation going on. How that and where that goes, it really does depend. I mean, I'm not going to speculate, but I will say that this distributed ledger technology, decentralized finance, these are things that are going to be really, really impacting us. Not so much as they'll be impacting emerging markets. We're going to see the real action in the emerging markets, but they're going to be here. A lot of the technology actually gets developed in developed countries, and then it gets shipped out to where it has a demand. And that's, I think, what we're seeing right now. Yeah.
anyone else?
I had a tech question. Kind of the reason I came here. So you mentioned that this, my country, creating all these dollars. So for those that don't know, in the Great Depression, the U.S. spent 6% of GDP to get out of that. Last year they spent 26% to get fucking COVID.
Yeah.
It just makes me sick. So here I am tonight at a crypto.
Welcome aboard.
But what I don't understand on the tech side is the ledger. Everybody I talk to, smart people, the ledger. And then I go and I read Coinbase. You open your account and the fucking money is gone. Well, that makes no sense to me.
So this
Where's
is
the ledger?
Okay, so this is the question of what's typically termed as custody or custodial. Custody just means ownership. Like, where is your crypto? The more usable exchanges and applications have non-custodial accounts. That means that they're basically holding that money for you. You don't hold it.
Can I be just even more dumb? When a coin is created,
right,
on this ledger, I mean, that tells me there's like there's like a code attached to it.
Sure.
That never disappears.
Yeah.
But how is it stolen from accounts?
Well, it's moved to someone's wallet that you can't trace.
They say not your keys, not your coin.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, say again?
Yeah, go ahead.
Not your keys, not your coin.
Not your keys, okay.
Yeah.
So just to, I think, chip in here, there hardly has been any case where people got their wallets hacked, like in retail, like persons. What you're seeing here in Coinbase is, I mean, they hacked them, the company, and they had probably one wallet which was not in cold storage, as he just said. So that means the keys were at some point in the internet, and they are kind of like a honeypot because they host the money of a lot of users.
Yeah.
And then what they hacked was the company, and they leaked the funds, and maybe it can even be that they didn't take any funds and they just hacked the database of Coinbase, and then they just put zero to everyone. You know, you don't know there because that's not a ledger. That's a completely different thing. That's basically having a bank with numbers assigned to each person. The difference is in the bank there's no money.
Yeah. So there's a difference between having a like custody. Okay, so typically when we're talking about, for example, cold storage, what you're saying is that you've basically got a physical device that only you can access because you own the encryption keys that can decrypt it. So yeah, no, if you don't own the keys, you don't own the product. But this is kind of a this is what's called a maximalist approach, and there are people who are very hardcore about this, and like. Yeah, and I think what we're going to find with things like cold storage is a pain, right? If you have to walk around with some device that's like, I don't know, USB or whatever, and you could still potentially lose that. So there's no such thing as a risk-free system, and it's your appetite for risk traded off the convenience that you get. Okay, so if I'm buying crypto and I'm having it as a store of value, I don't care about trading it. I don't care about paying for anything. Cold storage is the way to go, right? Because like I don't, you know, I'm not going to be actively trying to access my crypto, but that's not the case for a lot of people. A lot of people need the convenience that comes with it. So a non-custodial account can potentially be a solution, and there's regulatory ways that we can even make that framework work, because we can say we can insure up to a certain amount of your crypto. So a lot of the better e-money institutions have adopted what the bank does. Basically, if deposits of up to 80,000 in the UK, it's £80,000, are guaranteed. Okay, so like even if that bank blows up tomorrow and there's a bank run, your £80,000 is safe. So what a lot of people do, so now we're going into wealth management, is they open multiple bank accounts. Right, so like that way, if you have more than 80,000, you can protect yourself in those ways. So there are regulatory frameworks, and I agree with you, by the way. I think we shouldn't be running away from regulation. We should be inviting it. It's just regulation can be good and it can be bad, right? So that you have to lobby for the correct kind of regulation. I personally have hard storage, and I have non-custodial accounts with
Because I think just to clarify, non-custodial means it's under no custody, right?
Yeah, it's or not your custody.
A hot wallet is non-custodial.
Yeah, I mean, the way to explain it is, if you have custody, you own it, right? If a non-custodial means that we're sharing a wallet, like Coinbase, as you mentioned.
So that's custodial.
So yeah, is it a custodial? Yeah. Maybe I've got them wrong.
Yeah, it's I was getting confused.
Sorry, that would maybe one is that you have ownership, and the other one is that you don't. and whichever. Yeah, I apologize. But I use both. I use both because I hold some cryptocurrency that I do not want to trade, and I'm just holding it as a store of value. So again, the idea is you're trading convenience for security. So, and that's always typically what it comes down to on a principled level.
To put an example is like in your bank when you have like in your debit card maybe like a couple of thousand kroners, and then you have your savings account, and if you lose your card, you don't have the risk of losing all of your savings, only what it's there, and they can spend with the contactless or this thing.
And
like this.
And absolutely, and even then, of someone who has had their debit card stolen, even then I managed to get the money back because there was still a guarantee on the bank that issued the card. So there are definitely ways of being able to protect, but there has to be an appetite for it, and there has to be a market for it, and there has to be people have got to engage with that. But any more horror stories? Who's lost crypto wallets? That's no take.
Success story.
Success stories,
But
yes.
These horror stories, they're not, just for crypto.
No, exactly.
It's,
Yeah.
most horror stories are just normal money, normal banks, normal everyday bullshit.
100% correct. I mean, like,
Still, people don't go, oh, I have to change bank because somebody skipped my card.
Uh,
It's none of that.
yeah.
Just deal with it and move on.
and also those horror stories tend to happen in the places where they hurt the people most. Like when we're talking about the inflation killing your wealth, that's not something that typically happens here, but it does happen in a lot of places. So I would suggest get a hardware wallet, have a custodial account, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. Basically, like distribute that.
But I think that the question is the old truth that if you're a noob, you get reaped. Like having your money in Coinbase, you're asking for it, right? So there you have the paranoid bunch of people who are doing cold storage,
Yes.
etc., etc. And then we are talking about the usability. Like how do you make your grandmother buy crypto? She will never understand public-private key cryptography, and she won't know anything about how to do that, right? So then we are trying to make it easier and easier and easier, so that we can trade between countries, etc., etc. And we say, oh, we invent regulation, we want banks to be involved in it, we want the states to be involved in it. But then in the end, I fear you end up with the same fiat money as we have now, right? So the whole soul of the idea just disappears.
And
so how do you do it usable without creating a new
alternative system that's just as
as
fragile?
bad as exactly.
Yep.
Well, if you want people to get to use it, then you still need a backup. Because like if we talk about Sweden, most of the people would like to get to use the krona, for example.
Yeah.
They still, most of them will want security.
Yes.
Otherwise,
Why? Yeah.
why
Yeah.
bother? So yes, I understand the need to be more free and all of that, but most of the people, regular people, will need that security.
Yes. Agreed.
And,
And just to come back with how do you prevent something like creating just an alternative fragile system? I think again technology probably has some answers there as well, because there's more than one way of generating cryptocurrency. Like mining is one of them, proof of work, proof of stake. So there's ways that you can actually limit the physical amount of a certain currency that's created. Now, there are different models. I'm not an expert, but I'm not giving financial advice. But there are different currencies that you can look at that have models that put checks and balances in. Now, they're only checks and balances. Like nothing's perfect at the end of the day, and there is an overhead in trying to get you understand the technology that's involved. But that's where I think third parties can come in. And you quite rightly said, my grandma's never going to use crypto unless she doesn't know she's using crypto, right? So like, but the idea of technology being invisible, that's the kind of best technology, right? If someone puts forward a system and you have to go through the headache of learning it, maybe you're someone who likes that headache. I mean, there's plenty of geeks who enjoy the challenge of doing it, but for the mass majority of people, I think technology is a driver to, if there's an appetite for it, if grandma wants to use it and I can provide a service that allows her to get there, then I think that's a market-driven solution, basically.
And that's, I mean, if we think, before we were mentioning success stories, and then if we think of El Salvador, I mean, that's also like a clear example that we haven't mentioned yet.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Strike and speed, and with the lighting that you mentioned before.
Yeah, that's. It's good that you you mentioned that. So they've basically going to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender, and that has huge ramifications. I mean, how that one pans out, I don't know, but the fact that you have now state actors seriously taking that option is something that cannot be ignored. And by the way, there could be a domino effect, because once one state actor has done it, it's like those penguins when you're watching one penguin like jump in, and then if it goes in and it survives, then everyone else jumps in. So there's a very good chance of that. Again, these are not riskless systems. There are interests that will try and actively block that. I mean, there are already payments processors who wield incredible amounts of power, and you can even argue basically engage in financial terrorism, right? Because we have players like Swift, for example, Visa. These companies have huge power with respect to cross-border payments. And if they want to cancel an entire country and sanction a country, they can. Now, whether or not they do it for good or for worse, it's not really, who knows? Maybe for them it's in their interest, but it's certainly not in the interest of the people living in that country. So having alternatives to be able to handle things like cross-border payments is super, super important, at the detriment of some people who definitely don't want to enable that, or rather want to act as gatekeepers in that position, which we've seen over and over again. And Michael?
Yes, sir.
Time for a beer?
Always.
All right.
Are you ready? Or?
Is there any more questions, or we're going to pick it up after a beer, if that's cool.
Or during a beer and
or
pizza.
Yeah.
Sure. Now we have maybe just a little bit too little pizza, because some slackers just arrived. But we need to share.
Okay.
There's one type of pizza, because if there is any vegetarian here now, there is no vegetarian pizza. So just say. Should we take
15 minutes?
No, 30 minutes. We'll do for.
Okay.
It's normal for pizza break.
Okay, cool. Should we do it?
Yeah, and we say goodbye to everybody online.
Online, yeah. Goodbye online.
Is there any questions from online? Or?
Yeah, before. Cool. Okay.
All right.
Good stuff.
Yep. So, good night to everybody online.
See you guys.
See you next time. Hopefully you could be here.
Yeah, in person. Cool.
Yes.
So.
A big hand to Sal.
You're too kind. No, but it's been as educational for me as I hope it has been for you guys. So, but the real fun starts when we go into the beers and pizza.
We Swedes are polite.
Yes.
That's why we give you.
Thank you very much. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. Cool. Shall we?
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys, and help yourselves beers and pizza.